it going, my friends? Thank you for coming and joining us for day 4 of our favorite fabrics for fall sewing event, and today we are talking about sweater knits. Now, I get a lot of questions in the Facebook group, and we see a lot of questions, the admin team sees a lot of questions about sewing with sweater knits and kind of what are the tips and tricks. I have talked to so many sewists lately that are just like, I've got all these beautiful sweater knits and they just sit there and look pretty because I'm scared to cut into them because I don't know how to sew them. So hopefully today we are going to go through a bunch of tips and tricks and give you some pattern recommendations, as well as maybe some tips for how to adjust your settings on your sewing machines and your sergers to be most successful when you are sewing with these types of fabrics. All of the fabrics that we're talking about today are from Sincerely Riley, and sweater knits are kind of what she specializes in. She does drops all the time with beautiful, beautiful bundles of sweater knits, and they are nice and coordinated and just amazing textures, really fun fabrics to play with. So make sure you check out her website. And all of the patterns, of course, are Ellie and Mac patterns. So I'll give you some suggestions on different patterns that you can use, and maybe steps that you would want to take to reinforce anything if you are sewing with really slouchy sweater knits like this. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the general sweater knit category has a big range of different types of fabrics. We've talked about your French terries, your hackies. We talked about some rib knits, which are often just kind of lumped in that sweater knit kind of category. And then the ones that we're going to talk about today are just general sweater knits, and we've got a loose weave. We've got kind of like a medium weave, and this one actually does have the vertical striping of the weave, but it's not a rib knit, because the rib knits, we remember, have like the chasms kind of between, and they're a much tighter weave, where this one actually has, you know, the whole kind of the holes in the weave that categorize a sweater knit. This one is a lot heavier, so it's very, very thick. So you'll find that they come in a lot of varying weights and varying patterns. This one has a really fun kind of hexagonal pattern texture to it, and so that gives a really great texture to whatever the garment is that you're sewing. This one is a loose weave as well, and you have just a really, really beautiful open weave texture to it. And then we've got a tighter weave that is a lightweight. So we've got lightweights and heavyweights and different, you know, varying weaves and that kind of thing. Now this one is a very, very lightweight. So this would make a great like overlay, or if you want to make like a yoga sweater or something like that. You can just kind of see, if you've looked at the close-up pictures and everything, that there's a huge range of textures, weave patterns, all different kinds of things. And that's what makes sweater knits so much fun to sew with. And you can sew the same going home raglan sweater 14, 47, however many times, and every single time it's going to look completely different because you've got different weights, you have different textures, different colors, different patterns, all kinds of things just within this scope of fabrics that are called sweater knits. Now, when I have sweater knits that I'm not sure of the composition, you got them out of a mystery box, for example, you just want to make sure that you are always pre-washing those fabrics. I know I've said that in all the videos, but you want to make sure of that in case there is natural fibers like a cotton in there, something that might shrink. Then you want to make sure and, you know, prep your fabric in the right way. Along that line, with sweater knits specifically, you will see along the edges that you have those, the ends of those weaves, and that I think is what scares most people about sewing with sweater knits, is they're scared that they're going to, you know, come unraveled or distort or something like that. So when I ran this through the wash, there's a couple things that you can do. You can treat it like a woven, and that is to go ahead and zigzag stitch or serge the edge of your fabric all the way around before you throw it in the wash. Or you can, and this is just what I did, is throw it in one of those laundry bags, like those soft lingerie bags, and make sure that you wash it on delicate. And then I actually left it in the bag. I took it out and, you know, fluffed it and then put it back in the bag to put it in the dryer so that it wouldn't risk getting snagged in everything in your washer or coming unraveled or anything like that. So that's a couple of tips for you for care. So if you're in our Facebook group, then maybe you caught the Facebook Live video that I did this morning, and I just hopped on to see what some of your biggest questions were when dealing with sweater knits. And some of the main ones that I got are about hemming your sweater knits and about when you are sewing, making sure that those sweater knits aren't being distorted and stretched as you go. Because what you'll find is that with a lot of your knits, you have spandex or lycra, same thing, in there too, and that's what, those fibers are what creates the stretch in your fabric. Now with a sweater knit, a lot of times that stretch is coming from the actual weave pattern. So you have a really, really awesome stretch, but because it's the actual weave, when you pull that, it can change the shape of your fabric. You can run into distorting, you can run into growing a little bit when, you know, over the course of the day, because it doesn't have the bounce that we talk about when we talk about recovery in our knits. This is the High Hope Stolman, and I wanted a sweater that was very slouchy. I wanted it to fall off the shoulder. I wanted it to be really loose and really, really drapey, and it's just super, super cozy. Now, I didn't reinforce any of the seams or anything like that on this because I wanted that very slouchy look. So if you want to make, for example, a breezy, and that is what this is, then you are going to want to reinforce your waist seam with clear elastic. And that is because the weight of the skirt is going to pull down and you don't have as much of the recovery in a sweater knit. So it can grow over the course of the day. And you want your waist seam to stay at your waist. You don't want it to be moving down over the course of the day. So all you're going to do is include clear elastic in that seam when you're sewing, and that is going to, the elastic is going to help it, you know, stay right around your waist, right where it should be. You can use that same elastic in your shoulder seams if you're making a cardigan, like the Cardigan Love, where it's a longer cardigan. Then you would definitely want to reinforce those shoulder seams with clear elastic, and that way it holds up that fabric and doesn't start getting really slouchy and distorted over the course of the day. I don't want this to scare you off because putting clear elastic in is super, super, super easy. You can sew your seam and then sew the clear elastic onto your seam allowance, or if you are really good at pinning and clipping and using those tools the way that we all probably should use them, then you can just put it down and sandwich it, or not sandwich it, but put it on top of your 2 layers of fabric and sew it in as you go. And that will help it maintain its shape over the course of the day and then maintain the integrity of the silhouette that you've got. Sometimes you're working with a bulkier sweater knit like this, especially if you're doing something with multiple layers, then you want to grade your seam allowance. Now what I mean by grading is once you fold it over and you sew it down, you can cut off the excess. Now anywhere that you have a whole bunch of layers, especially like where you have a cuff and there's multiple layers here, and you're not going to be able to do this if you're serging, but if you're sewing, you can cut the outermost or the innermost layer shortest and then cut the middle one in between and leave the longer one long. And the reason that you would do that is it really helps, surprisingly a lot, helps to reduce the bulk in those seams. Differential feed plays a big role in your sewing with your sweater knits. Now I just clicked mine back down to 1, which is your standard setting for your differential feed. And I am going to show you why this makes a difference. And this is just a scrap piece that I have. So I just let it feed itself through. And this is what I'm left with. And it is a wobbly, wavy mess. So I'm going to click mine up 3 clicks. That is just, you know, I tested this out before. So based on this fabric, and I'll fold this over again. Look at the difference. Straight, wavy mess. Huge, huge difference. So that, your differential feed is the feeding of the fabric through here, and that makes a big difference. This is why if you're sewing with a sewing machine, using a walking foot also works really well for this. So one of the tricky parts about working with open weave or loose weave sweater knits is hemming. And if you can be like me, and if you don't want to deal with hemming an open or a loose weave sweater knit, choose a pattern that is bands and cuffs, and then you don't have to do any hemming at all. But you don't always have that luxury. Sometimes you want to make a really beautiful dolman top, or like an everyday tee or something like that, where you want to hem the bottom. Now there's a few different things that you can do to hem these so that all of these open little bits and weaves don't come unraveled after you hem it, because if you just fold it under, if you have maybe a looser weave than this and you fold it under and you don't catch all of those loops and everything, it can come unraveled, and you definitely don't want that. So a few things that you can do. Now you want to use something like this because it stretches. You wouldn't want to use regular cotton bias binding because it doesn't have enough stretch. Now you can see or maybe you can see that I do have my iron marks from where I ironed this. Okay, now I have a straight line to fold this over, and you'll want to make sure that you caught all of these edges here. So you're going to fold this up and then fold it all the way around to the back side. So that is folded under. You can see how nice and even that is because the bias tape had those iron marks in it, which is why you want to iron it first. Even though it doesn't really hold it shape that well because it's a mesh, it still helps. And now you have a nice even hem. You've got your bias tape there, and it's enclosing any of those raw edges. The last thing you can do is, a lot of people have the knit stay tape that you use. I know I used it a lot when I was learning to sew for getting those perfect hems. And so you can put that on there, and fusible interfacing like that is going to fuse, the glue is going to fuse to the edges here, and that's really going to help these from coming undone and everything. And then you do the same thing and just flip it under and sew it down. And you do also want to be aware that if you are changing your hemming methods, then you want to kind of keep in mind your hem allowance. Now, if you are going to eat up a ton more fabric than the 1 inch or however much is allowed in your pattern, you're going to have to make adjustments. Thank you guys for joining me today for day 4 of our favorite fabrics for fall event with Ellie and Mac and Sincerely Riley. We hope you guys enjoyed all of our fabrics today and are inspired to use up all of those beautiful, beautiful sweater knits and get sewing them. There are a lot of really amazing patterns that you can use. The Fall in Love sweater would be perfect. I am wearing the High Hopes Dolman, if I didn't mention that already. This is a really fantastic fall pattern. We've of course got our very popular favorite sweater that's the off the shoulder that folds over. There is going to be your Fire Slide or your Breezy like this one. Tons of our patterns are perfect for sweater knits, so don't be afraid to get them out and get them sewn up. Now if you have any questions, you can always pop those in the comments below, and if you're catching this in our Facebook group during the event, post an Ellie and Mac make in sweater knit for a chance to win today's prize. And if you're catching this on YouTube, make sure you check out our Facebook channel or our Facebook group, where we're always doing fun promotions and sales and all kinds of giveaways like this. Now if you guys have questions, you can ask those in our group, or fabric specific questions you can ask to Darcy over in Sincerely Riley's group. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and we'll see you tomorrow for our very last day, which is kind of an amalgamation of all of the random other knits that we didn't get a chance to go through in the first couple of videos. So we'll see you tomorrow, and thanks again, guys.